Today's question comes from a mom who's in the middle of nesting, and as you can imagine, when you are doing your final moments of prepping to prepare for the birth of your baby, you just want to make absolute sure that you have everything that you need, which is why this one mom asks, I'm in full-on nesting mode and I'm trying to make sure I have everything prepared before our baby arrives. What did you find helpful to have or do beforehand? Well, I can think of tons of things. We are going to go through a list of things for you to prep and prepare, as well as things for you to have on hand. But before we get started, if we haven't hung out before, my name is Briana. I'm a fellow mom and money coach, and here we talk about all things mom and money from moms for moms just like you. But with that, let's go ahead and dive into today's question. What do we need to have on hand? So I think initially the first thought is, oh, freezer meals, right? Stock up your freezer because you're not going to have time, nor are you going to want to bake or cook once your baby arrives. And even if you have a really good established meal train ahead of time, it is possible that the meals that are dropped off might not be what you're kind of feeling in the evening or in the moment when it's time to eat. And if you're planning to breastfeed, can I just say that you will be ravenously hungry. So I really would encourage you, based off of my own experience, to not only have a whole bunch of freezer meals, but also quick meals that you can pull out and reheat in the microwave, like single servings, lots of snacks, and refreshing sports drinks. So when I say sports drinks, I kind of think of Gatorade or Pedialyte or anything that's going to help replenish the nutrients in your body, because not only will you be incredibly thirsty, because there's a lot of fluid loss once you give birth, but if you're breastfeeding, you're going to need a lot of fluid replacement as well to help increase your breast milk supply. So I think that just being more mindful of that, whether that's juice or, a sports drink of some kind, just make sure you have both of those on hand. Now, some of the things that I really enjoyed during this time that were a little bit quicker were smoothies. So this is not some of the smoothie items can go in the freezer, but frozen fruit and vegetables and stuff like that. Well, if you put vegetables in your smoothies, I know some people do, but then also to have fresh, whole, full fat yogurt, because you will kind of want to, again, have really nutrient dense meals and nutrition, since you're going to be very hungry and you're trying to help your body heal, to have that on hand and in your fridge. Now, thankfully, yogurt does have a pretty long shelf life. But then also some more simple things, even just muffins and putting those in your freezer, or having granola on hand. Those were kind of the things that I really thought that was super helpful when I came home from the hospital with my baby. Now, in addition to that, you probably are not going to want to spend very much time cleaning your kitchen. So I found it super helpful, and I recommend to all of my friends now to make sure that they have disposable plates and bowls and utensils and even paper towels and sanitizing wipes, because even if you can do your dishes, it may not be something that you want to be doing, or maybe you've gone through all of your bowls and you need something really quick and you need to just grab a paper plate. So it was just nice to have a little bit of grace over our situation, that they were there if we wanted to use them, and if we were feeling good and our kitchen was clean, great, we didn't need to. They kept fine for the next one around. Now, I also recommend, and this is kind of going more into the visitation area of when you plan to have visitors after your baby is born, is to have hand sanitizer and even potentially disposable masks. Now, I know that we do want to encourage our guests to wash their hands before they hold the baby, but then I also requested people to use hand sanitizer as well, because not everyone washes their hands in the same manner that I would like to make sure that germs are removed, especially when my baby is so young and fragile. So I wanted to have that extra layer of just protection. And then in addition to the fact that now some people may be like, well, mask, that seems kind of extreme. But I do encourage you to think about whether or not you want to have disposable masks on hand, because if you don't, if someone shows up and you're concerned about, they sound like they have a sniffle, or they have a like slight cough, or their voice sounds a little bit dry, instead of like immediately removing them from your home, which you do you, like whatever you feel is most comfortable, like you're there to protect your baby. So if you feel that's appropriate, go for it. If you're concerned with any boundaries, which I do have an episode about this, as far as like whether or not, what boundaries should you set for your guest to visit your baby, and what should you do if they cross that boundary. And we do discuss in that episode on having masks if you're concerned about anyone kissing your baby, or if they've already crossed that threshold. It just puts a physical barrier over their face, and also gives you a little bit more of time, if you're there, seeing them take that motion of sliding that mask down before they actually kiss your baby. So if that's something that resonates with you, then that might also be something to think about putting on your list as well. Let's go into all of the things that you need to do before your baby arrives. So some of these of course, are going to seem like, well, that's just common sense, right? But when we are dealing with baby brain, sometimes the things that we are like, oh yeah, that was on my to-do list, and then when you go to do it, it's completely like you have like that thought has escaped your brain. So I'm gonna say them here anyway. And that is to wash all of your baby's laundry: the clothes, the blankets, the birth cloths, the sheets, the towels, anything that your baby is going to be using or wearing or having around them that has not been washed since you've received it, whether that's from a department store or been gifted or a thrift store or whatever. You have no idea how many people touch all of those things before it actually arrives in your home. So I just felt better having everything washed and clean before my baby interacted with it. Same thing with any toys that they may be interacting, especially if they can go in the wash. Otherwise, it may be appropriate to like hand wash them like you would dishes, or to sanitize them with like a sanitization wipe, whatever your preference is based off of, like the type of toy that it is. And then setting up any of the furniture or any additional items that you may have that you haven't already put together during your whole nursery prep or nesting, time frame. And that might be like a bassinet or crib, like making sure that all the sheets are on it, setting up the dresser, if you have a bouncer or swing or high chair, making sure all of that is set up as well. Because even though it's not, I found for my infants, we did end up we held them a lot, but we also used the recline position in the high chair after they got a little bit older more often than I expected, especially before they were actually using or actually eating real food. We would just pop them in the high chair to hang out with us, or set them in the swing. So you might be surprised how often you might actually use those pieces if you have them readily available to you. And then install your car seat. So you will want to make sure your car seat is installed, or at least in your car, when you go to the hospital or the birthing center, wherever you give birth. So installing your car seat now is a great option to do that during that whole nesting phase too. Some things to make sure you have on hand for your baby, especially if you didn't get some of these things in your baby registry. I actually did a big shopping spree right before, maybe the weekend before my baby was due, just to make sure we had everything. Went through all of my cupboards, all of that, and just yep, did all of my things, make it actually in my home. So this was the list of what I had. I had diapers and wipes and diaper cream. Now, some parents, depending on their preference as well as how their child just reacts to different creams, have both Bordeaux's butt paste or an off-brand, or an A&D ointment. I actually use both of them with my children, and I like them for different purposes. So having some sort of, butt paste, butt cream type thing will be helpful to deal with rashes, or as a moisture barrier as a prevention. A nail clipper or scissors for your baby, or some sort of like nail file to trim the nails, as well as a baby thermometer. Now, if they get a high enough fever, I'm not a medical provider, so I'm not even going to attempt to put a specific like temperature degree in my video in case for any reason it's wrong. Like, I would rather you talk to your specific pediatrician to get medical advice. We wanted to be able to take our baby's temperature without disturbing our baby. So we had like a forehead thermometer temperature reading, which is not completely accurate, but this at least allowed us to determine like, okay, are they actually running warm? Because if that reading is getting up there, then we could then take a more accurate internal reading and get a real reading, especially if our baby was already asleep or something like that. Then we're not unnecessarily waking them to check their temperature. So I will leave that thermometer. Actually, I'll leave resources to all of these in the episode details, so you can go there and like review and determine which of these options might be best for you. Just be aware that that scanning head thermometer is not, like I said, it's not completely accurate. So we just used it more as a gauge than as an actual determination with when we needed to seek medical attention. And then when it comes to like feeding and nursing, these are the things that we wanted to have on hand for our baby. And that was infant formula. And this needs to be a liquid, not necessarily a powder. Even though I was planning on breastfeeding, so I had heard that sometimes you make a plan for something and then it doesn't actually turn out the way that you expected. I mean, that's just life, right? So I wanted to make sure that I had infant formula on hand, so that way if we needed to, we weren't making a rush a rush trip to the store to pick up formula, and our baby is crying and fussing because they're extremely hungry. I wanted to be able to buy at least ourselves like at least an hour window to go and pick up more formula if I knew that that's something that we were going to need to supplement, or if that was the direction that we were going to need to go for any reason. So I had just a few limited servings on hand, because it is and can be expensive, especially since it needs to be in that liquid form, not the powder. We also, for the same reason, had bottles on hand. So you want to wash and sanitize your bottles. When I was going through my challenges with breastfeeding, that it was recommended to have low flow or slow flow nipples for your bottles. And so I'll link some of those as well in the episode details, because that way, especially when your babies are newly born, the regular standard nipples for bottles allow more milk to go through, and young babies have a really hard time kind of keeping up, and it can also lead to gas and colic and all of those things. Or you can even look for like a preemie nipple for your baby, which is naturally going to be a slower flow nipple as well. And then syringes. So we wanted to make sure we had syringes if we needed to give our baby any medicine, or we did actually have to syringe feed our son for a short amount of time. So having those on hand, I always recommend as well. Finally, pacifiers. So if you choose to use them, we were not intending to use pacifiers, but with the reality of a newborn and sometimes trying to help them like self-soothe and like get used to finding their fingers and like figuring out how to comfort them and get sleep and all the other things, I was more lenient in the reality of just like, okay, we need to do what's best in this exact moment for us to be able to all get rest and sleep. And so I was willing to give our sons a pacifier, and I wanted to make sure I had one on hand so I could kind of make that determination at the time of. And so we weren't, again, running out to the store to get one, because we decided like, oh yeah, we need one in this exact moment. All right, bath time. You'll probably want to have a baby bathtub, as well as tear-free wash or shampoo, and then baby lotion. So your baby's body will get dry very easily. You might also want to have baby oil to add to the baby bath to help your baby's skin stay moisturized. I kind of chose to go the route of not bathing our baby every day. And my husband always looked at me and he was like, "This is like the weirdest thing ever." He's like, "This seems so unsanitary." And it wasn't until actually very recently that he finally believed me because he read an article somewhere. Now, if you want to bathe your baby every day, go for it. But when I did, I would also make sure that our, baby had baby lotion or we added baby oil just to make sure that their skin didn't incredibly dry out. And also, baby oil can be really helpful for when they experience cradle cap, which is not something that you have done to them to get. I think all babies get cradle cap because their scalp just naturally peels after they're born. So having baby oil on hand for that, as well as a fine tooth comb, whether it's, a specific baby product from like a baby manicure set, or if you just have like, I don't know, a dollar store fine tooth comb, I think either option will be really good as well. For their nursery or their room, wherever they're sleeping, I wanted to make sure that I had a baby monitor, a noise machine or fan. And then depending on the climate that your baby is born in, you might also want to have a humidifier or a diffuser for your baby's room as well. Well, what about for you? So since you are going to be going through birth, there's going to be a couple of things that you probably will want to have on hand for yourself as well. Now, some of these things may be provided by the hospital, such as a perineal bottle for, using the bathroom after you give birth, as well as mesh underwear. And even though your hospital may provide you with some pads, you will most likely want to pick up way more because you will be bleeding pretty intensely for quite a while. Just keep in mind that every woman is different, but I don't think it's unreasonable to expect to have a pretty either heavy to medium flow, like what you would experience on your period for several weeks, depending on what your period is actually like. Now, when it comes to nursing, if you plan to nurse your baby, some specific items that you may want to have on hand is nipple cream or some soft shells. I have heard a lot of women say that they like nipple cream was a lifesaver. I personally actually never used any, but I did use soft shells by Medela. I know that there's probably a couple of different brands, but I actually found these to be way more helpful than nipple cream, but to each their own. I will link both in the episode details so you can figure out which option or both might be best for you. And then you're also going to want nursing pads because you're going to leak, as well as a nursing bra, which I'm expecting that you might already kind of be planning or preparing for. Now, if you're going to pump or supplement feed your baby, you will also want to make sure that you have your pump, any flanges that you need, as well as a nursing bra to be able to support you while you're pumping. If you are like, well, I don't really want to go the pumping route, but I do want to be able to collect breast milk, then you might want to consider a Haka. Now that is the name brand. There's other off-brand options as well. Actually, I think I used just like a retail off-brand option, which worked perfectly great. And any breast milk storage bags for freezing or storing anything that you collect in the fridge. And finally, you're going to want to have any pain relief medication. Now, your hospital or your doctor will talk to you about what was appropriate for you. Some things that my hospital recommended were Tylenol and ibuprofen, as well as a stool softener like Colace were the like over-the-counter not prescription items that they recommended that I make sure I pick up on my way home from the hospital. So if you happen to have them already in your cupboard, you can save yourself a trip. And then you're going to, just like for your baby, want to wash any of your comfortable clothing that you might want to have on hand, including your linens or blankets that just allow you to just like lounge and stay super cozy during your time at home. Now, if you are a mom that has listened to this episode, I would love to hear your suggestions. So please make sure you drop them in the comments for this mom or any other one that comes across this episode. But in addition to all of the nesting and prepping for once you get home, you will also want to make sure that you pack your hospital bag. So if you're wondering what should be included or what to expect at the hospital, I will link up those episodes for you next. But until we hang out again, I hope you create your own heart home.